I hope everybody's doing well today. Well, for the first time since 1861, an American state's ruling party has formally endorsed a referendum on secession. Would most Texans like to secede from the Union? Well, we may be finding out soon enough. Texas Republicans are dead serious about secession, and they've put this in their new platform, and they want to put it to a vote next year. The Lone Star State's Republican Party may be playing with fire, as our country already seems to be on the brink of civil war anyway. And now this might seem like wild-eyed hyperbole, but in a recent poll, it seems that Americans believe that a civil war is actually likely in the near future. You may have seen headlines that talk about the Republican Party of Texas. In their convention with thousands of delegates from across the state, they approved a new platform that declared homosexuality an abnormal lifestyle choice. They went on to make claims about the 2020 election that I cannot talk about on YouTube. The Texas Republican platform is consistently an American First platform, and its assertions are not altogether surprising. With its new platform, the Texas Republican Party has formally endorsed a referendum on the state seceding from the United States. The Texas Republican Party is drifting away from the establishment Republicans and towards the MAGA wing of the party. The new platform claims the federal government has impaired our right to local self-government, and it goes on to say that Texas retains the right to secede from the United States, and the Texas legislature should be called upon to pass a referendum on secession. Such a referendum would not be an abstract exercise. Instead, the Republican Party of Texas believes that such a referendum should be held next year, with the Texas legislature passing a bill in its next session requiring a referendum in the 2023 general election. Keep in mind the Republican Party controls the Texas legislature, so this really is not outside the realm of possibility. Previous Texas Republican platforms have alluded to secession, with the most recent iteration in 2020 claiming the state's right to secede if the United States ever stopped being a constitutional republic. The new platform, though, is unique not only in its formal endorsement, but for specifying a timeline for such a vote. The party's formal endorsement of a vote on removing Texas from the United States is not the party's first historic lurch towards state fracture. Last year, an American legislator filed the first serious bill since the Civil War calling for a referendum on secession. Kyle Biederman, a Republican in the Texas House, introduced this bill, but it ended up stalling out in committee. But it did receive a flood of support before it did, with a range of endorsements from Texas legislature. At least one state senator, Republican Lois Kolkhorst, came out in favor of a referendum, as did former Texas GOP chairman Allen West. Regardless of what Texas legislators may think, the federal government views secession as illegal. Justice Scalia once wrote, "If there was any constitutional issue resolved by the Civil War, it is that there is no right to secede." So, obviously, this would cause a civil war. No matter how sick of Democrats we might be, and we're pretty sick, it could be argued that pushing for breaking up the United States seems to run contrary to being patriotic or supporting America first, or of backing policies that would benefit things like our economy or the American national security. And obviously, these things are very, very intricately tied between Texas, other states, and the country. On the right, we often claim that Democrats are tearing the country apart. Do we want to beat them to the punch? Unlike other states, Texas was an independent nation prior to joining the United States, having declared independence from Mexico in 1836. In the past few years, we've seen a shift in organized support for Texas leaving the United States. Some claim that the shift has been motivated by foreign elements, mostly out of Russia. And in addition to Texas, secessionists flying to Moscow multiple times throughout the 2010s, Russian trolls organized a pro-secession Facebook page, and this page ended up more popular than Texas Democrat or Texas Republican page combined. It seems like the idea has a lot of support from disenfranchised voters on both sides of the aisle. The shift has been partly motivated by the state's changing demographics, with Texas Democrats pushing closer to winning statewide offices for the first time since the 90s. Conservatives sense that Texas is slipping into a blue state hellscape, with pro-Trump Republicans routinely outbidding one another in terms of conservative policies, everything from banning abortions at the national level to repealing church and state separation. It's no surprise that some Republican legislators in Texas have begun turning towards secession as a potential and maybe even necessary reality. And the Republican base seems happy to go along, as a group of academics found out last year. Half of Republicans in the state support secession. There are deep divisions in American politics and American culture. Consequently, the notion of secession and separation could no longer be laughed at or categorically dismissed. Failure to take the Texas GOP seriously makes potential secession and the devastation that would surely follow even likelier. Given the aftermath of the 2020 election, it's within the realm of possibility that if Biden or some Democrat who's down in the polls by 10 points should win in 2024, the Texas Republican Party will probably leap into the pro-secession fire with conviction, because they will believe, once again, they've been fleeced. This may well be the spark that ignites a second American Civil War. If this were to emerge in the coming years, America could still see millions of casualties and hundreds of thousands of deaths in a conflict potentially even more catastrophic than the First Civil War. Few understand the economic, social, and national security ties that the states have with each other and with the federal government, and these just could not simply be walked away from. People who think that January 6th was bad or an insurrection would be in for a very rude awakening. We would have a perpetual replay of the George Floyd riots on steroids in every city, every day, for years until the country was burnt to the ground. But hey, isn't that what the Marxist left wants? Hope you guys have a great day. I will talk to you in a while.